I would like to welcome all of you to the Mayor's Task Force on Recovery and Resilience. And recognize first we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Sami First Nation. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Today's special meeting of the Mayor's Task Force on Recovery and Resilience will be held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272, and Ministerial Order number M192. And therefore, members of the public are required to observe meetings virtually and not attend in person. The question period will be suspended throughout the duration of this order being in effect. And members of the staff that are partaking in the meeting will be spread out in the boardroom. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. But before we jump into that,
there's no late items.
I was going to say no. I noticed that in the story. Ms. Leggett, in her usual responsible way, ensuring that I don't make a jackass of myself to start off the meeting, has reminded me that our new director of IT, Brian, proper Scottish pronunciation, not I, is with us this morning, and want to welcome him. I think, as I said to you privately earlier, I think we're all very pleased to have you as part of the city team, so thank you. Motion for approval of the agenda. Ian, Donna, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. I was going to say, Councillor Brown, you're looking very serious this morning. Not that one should always have a smile on their face, but it is Friday.
I'm trying to figure out the video. I can't see anybody else.
Depending on who you're looking at, that could be a benefit if you're trying to look at me, but the others not so much, thank goodness.
So I'm just going to exit this and join again and see if that's correct.
Oh,
all right.
Ridership, could we get who that phone number is there? Could somebody with that phone number identify themselves so we know who's there? It's
619 828-8285.
That's Sydney.
Good morning, Sydney.
Morning.
Who else would it be, right?
Hey, I don't know.
A motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Ian, seconded Don. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Delighted to have a few presentations this morning. And I want to welcome Daniel Pierce, who's the General Manager of Transit and Emergency Services, Regional District of Nanaimo, and Larry Gardner, Manager of Solid Waste, Regional District of Nanaimo, who are going to provide a presentation regarding public transit and solid waste. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for taking time today.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Your Worship, and it's wonderful to attend via Zoom. Thank you for that opportunity. So we are at the Regional District Office right now in lovely North Nanaimo. I'll start off our presentation, if that's okay with the committee, and I'm going to share my screen right now. As stated, I'm the general manager that oversees the transit system and emergency services. That is actually very timely to do with COVID and what we went through over the last number of months and will be continuing into. Going into our system, so we did a number of different items for the operators and public safety. I'm going to walk you through this from March 19th going forward to June 13th, or June 3rd, sorry, and then all the way to now, kind of what we did and how we handled it and how we really were resilient through the entire first wave of the pandemic. So March 19th, we went to rear door boarding, we limited fare collection. And one of the biggest things, though, is without fare collection, we do offset. Local governments do get that back directly to our budget, so we lost out on all those funds. And then we decreased transit capacity to 15 to 20 riders. A large 40-foot conventional bus can actually carry upwards of 70 people, so 35 people seated, up to 70 with standee. So that was a major change within our service. March 25th, we did reduce to summer level service. We currently are still on summer level service. That's a 12% reduction from our regular everyday service during the year. Then we did actually change a few routes. We implemented a new Dew Point ferry service, ferry shuttle, because Departure Bay was closed. And then one of the major changes is we actually did return to front door boarding on June 1st, and then we actually increased transit capacity to 50% or 35 riders per bus, and that is currently operating right now. So my transit staff, I think the staff did an exceptional job, but as a whole, we actually implemented a temporary driver shield, and that got us up and running. From that, we shared it with the province, and the province then implemented it outside of BC Transit throughout the service, and even TransLink, we were in talks with TransLink on how those temporary shields were working. So we were a leader on that, and I'm very proud of that. And now we're actually implementing a permanent driver shield, where we're the protection from a barrier to individuals who could potentially be aggressors to the operators, as well as for other types of activities such as COVID. Our transit ridership. So prior to March 2020, we had ridership. I'm going to show you a chart next, but a daily ridership of 10,000 trips a day and over. We saw ridership growth from 9% from 2017 to 2019, but more importantly, we've been seeing growth even prior to that. So we saw anywhere from 5% all the way up to that 9%. The ridership growth, and I want to emphasize this, was improved by our improved transit service. So we've been seeing a number of expansions in our service over the last 10 years. Our last expansion was on the number 40 line, which operates between downtown along Bowen Road and uplands in the north of Nanaimo. That service, and you'll see on the next chart, is our highest demanded service. And the reason behind that is that it is tied to transit-oriented development. There's crosswalks, there's sidewalks, there's people living off Bowen Road, there's services to access off uplands, and we definitely see that as transit-oriented, very friendly development. And then, of course, with congestion and population increases, we definitely have seen over the years more riders coming to us, including more students and more commuters. After March, I don't want to talk about that too much because we are starting to now increase, but we did see a large decrease in ridership. It dropped down to anywhere between just under 4,000 rides a day. Again, we were at 10,000 rides plus a day. With that, you have to, the most important piece is the money that was actually lost through fare revenues. So we are down approximately about $1.2 million right now from in our fare response. Depending on what happens in the fall, we are estimating we could be out anywhere close to $2 to $2.1 million. But I'll talk about how we're going to be actually trying to manage that, and we have a bit of a game plan with that. Our weekday ridership still broken out. You'll see the blue line is the pre-COVID, and the green line is the COVID ridership. So you can see that the correlation, pre-COVID, the number 40 line was our highest ridership. Even with COVID, it's still our highest ridership. So it kind of gives you a context. And then, of course, there's some smaller routes. The number 91 is the intercity route, which operates between Nanaimo and intercity between Parkstone, Falcon Beach. You'll see the demand on that pre-COVID, and then, again, the demand is still there currently even. So this gives you a snapshot of where we're at the current levels of our system. This just shows where pre-COVID our ridership, again, it's just a graph, but the green again is just showing our weekdays, and the blue the Saturday and the gray the Sunday. So of course the weekdays are higher ridership, and you'll see the peaks. And the reason I wanted to show this is pre-COVID, we actually could plan our system. We knew that there was a peak in the morning, a peak in the afternoon, or peaks in the afternoon. From that, I went down to the first phase of it, where we decreased capacity, and we saw a flat line. We didn't see any peaks in the day. And in transit, that's very, very unusual. But of course, due to the time, as we're going forward, we're still not seeing those peaks, and that's something that is a challenge for our system as we plan. Systems, not just in Nanaimo, but across British Columbia and Canada and the United States, have built up the AM and the PM, and then in the middays, service does drop down, and as years and its expansions grow, you slowly build up that midday. But you always have more service in the AM and PM for commuter markets and students. So right now, our phase 2, you'll see it's kind of it is moving upwards, but that is a challenge for us as we go forward trying to manage that service or reinvent your service. So we are operating at a summer level of service. We did hear from the school districts and the province that we are going to be moving forward with kids going back to school. So with that, we are preparing to go back to full service in September. But we are going to be very fluid. And if needed be, we'll work with our board and we'll be able to go from summer level service back to full service fairly quickly within a matter of number of weeks with our operations group. I want to emphasize that we didn't miss any runs, no service was affected due to COVID. So we were able to operate at 12% levels of service, a reduction in service, and we didn't skip a beat, which I thought was very good for the public. We are going to continue to do that. So that's something that we're trying to definitely put out to the public, that transit is safe. We've put in a lot of additional cleaning measures. We are spraying the buses every day. day. We're wiping down the buses multiple times a day, touch points. We have road support agents, so supervisors on the road, helping riders if there's any challenges. We're encouraging the use of masks, so that's something that we're working with the province and BC Transit on, but we're encouraging them. They're not mandatory right now. And then the other piece going forward is that the federal government and the provincial government have said that transit funding is coming. We don't know the exact amount, but we're hopeful in the next couple of weeks. And then we also have a separate little pot of money that the province was holding for us with BC Transit, RDN funds, but held by BC Transit. We've asked for that to come back, and they have said yes. We just don't know the exact amount, but that will be coming back to us in the month of August. Is our hope. So with those levels of funding and our funding that was put off the side, we're hopeful to offset any of that $2 million lost in 2020. And with that, the transit projects. So this is the meat of what we are going to be working on into the future and really what our focus points and how we're going to grow our system and be resilient. So our transit redevelopment strategy is combined of, you could consider it a 5-year business plan. That is looking at a fleet realignment. So ultimately, are we utilizing the right size buses? Right now we have small handy-air buses, and then we have large 40-foot CNG compressed natural gas buses. So we don't have anything in the mid-size. So are we going to look at that? Do we have the right alignment? Utilizing a fare review. Traditionally, you do a fare review about every 5 years, but with our service changing and potentially changing in more of a rapid way, we'll be doing a fare review and looking at a fare strategy. So how do we do fares and look at them on a 1 to 2 year cycle within a 5-year length? And of course, we want to look at our existing transit network and then determine phase changes. So do we want to take from one area to implement another area? Do we need to reduce, or do we need to grow? And look at those all within those individual routes. And again, we want to look at that across our entire network, so the RDN. Our transit exchanges in Nanaimo are all at capacity, need upgrading. So with Woodgrove Mall, we are working with BC Transit and Ivanhoe Cambridge, the mall owners, to look at exchange development on their property. They've been a great partner, and we're going to continue looking at that. We are working with the city for an exchange at Country Club Mall, and that is also ultimately just an upgraded Country Club, so we're working at that and trying to see if we can't move that forward into the future. And then we also have the downtown exchange. Right now, that is on number 1 Port Drive, so that's a temporary exchange. We would like to see Transit's idea with BC Transit and the RDS is to actually see an on-street, off-street exchange, so something where we're able to use a little bit more of the piece of the property, but stay on one side. The idea behind that is that buses need to be able to loop in order to utilize the entire transportation network, depending on which direction they're going from the travel. But also, we want to make sure that pedestrians and cyclists and other modes of travel connect into a transit exchange. So transit exchanges have to be multimodal and going forward. So they need to be in areas where people can access them easily. If you get off one bus, you can see your other bus and get to it in a safe, easy manner. And from that, you can also walk away and get away from it, whether it's on a bike or car or taxi or other modes of travel. Last, we're working with the Cowichan Valley Regional District and BC Transit on interregional transit service. This is the first piece to interregional transit service project, so we want to, in the fall, talk to the public, look at that, but that is very much that first connector from Nanaimo down to, say, Duncan, and then from there we'd actually look at how else do we connect, really, the island together via public transit. We've seen over the number of years pre-COVID the demand and the changes that Greyhound made and other services made, but there's definitely a want coming from the public and a demand right now for going southbound, and we've also at the board level had inquiries about going northbound as well. So that's something in the future I can definitely see coming to our system. That's how do we connect our region to the regions outside of ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if anyone wants to ask some questions now, or we'll hear from Mr. Gardner. Donna.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. Thank you for your presentation, very informative. You mentioned that you expect a loss of $2.1 million overall, I guess, for the 2020 year, and that you have a plan in place to compensate for those funds? Are they just coming out of sort of general revenue stream through the RDN, or will your fare strategy is, I wouldn't think the intention is just to raise fares to make up funding. Is there some other revenue stream that will be able to fund the continued ridership? And I just want to say I appreciate that there was nothing affected during COVID. That's great that you guys are able to do that.
Thank you. Through your Worship. So there's three pieces to that answer. So both the federal government and the province have said there's funding coming to offset those fares, lost fares. We also have approximately $1.2 million that was being held in the reserve with BC Transit. So they have said they will be releasing that back to the regional district to be used to offset those fares. So we're looking at ultimately, if those are used, an $800,000 loss or potential loss. So we are hopeful. We don't know the numbers right now, but we are very hopeful that that will be made whole through the other funding announcements in a number of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Much appreciated. Mr. Gardner, good morning. Oh, pardon me, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Pierce, I'm just wondering if you could quickly outline, because we are sort of the task force that sort of look at to the future and things that will also just beneficial for Nanaimo in general. I'm just wondering if you could quickly speak to the potential of what proper exchanges could do for our system, and also how we kept pace with the transit, the future plan, which outlines our future growth.
Thank you, through your worship. Councillor Brown, I think you hit on two very important pieces. So we have not actually met within our transit system our planning growth. So ultimately, we want to set targets for our expansions and for growth in the transit. We won't always meet that, but we are behind on what the board had actually endorsed in 2015 as a whole. So we are a little bit behind, but with COVID, of course, that has set our targets even further behind. So that's something that as we go forward, we'll have to look at and see where we want our planning ultimately to take us. Exchange development. So exchanges are extremely important for the pedestrian travel interconnectivity between our systems. So one of the items that makes transit systems really inefficient is when you have to loop around or get in and out of an exchange by going the wrong direction down a road. So one thing we don't want is downtown Nanaimo buses driving down the street that they don't need to have a bus down, or looping around when they're going northbound when they're actually going southbound. As you get on a bus, and if you want to go northbound and it starts going southbound, you start to panic and go, where am I going? So we want to make it so they can do those travel changes ideally within an exchange or a small area. And then from there, the pedestrians can also see which bus they want to get on. With that, we do see that there's three types of exchanges. There's off-street, there's on-street, and then there's a blend, an off-on-street. BC Transit and the RDN would like to see it on-off-street. So that's kind of a little bit of best of both worlds. You're utilizing a bit of the road network and still have cycling tracks and all those other ideas and pedestrian networks. But you can also have that movement for pedestrians on an island in the middle. I'm visioning something, and I appreciate that I don't have it on the screen, but you'd have like an island and then also a road network on either side, so you could utilize those elements to the fullest.
I think that's it. Thank you very much. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you. I'm actually very honored to be here because I feel pretty special. I don't think everybody, or many people get invited to Mayor's Task Force to talk trash. So I do appreciate that.
I mean this both cheekily and quite sincerely. Trust me, you are special. And the RDN's record on environmental matters is, as you well know, prominent and well respected. So no pressure, though.
Well, thank you. So I'll share my screen here and we'll get things rolling. So if you ever wondered so solid waste and circular economy, if you wonder where the term circular economy originated, it was more than 50 years ago, and it was a paper, actually, The Economics of the Coming Spaceship Earth. It's available on Google. It's still relevant. But I don't doubt at the time it was pretty revolutionary thinking. So here's my dynamic opener.
Which unfortunately has no volume.
We're probably going to have to play it again because the volume isn't quite working.
Oh, sorry, are you able to play it directly there?
We're just sorting that out.
Give us a second here.
Okay.
It's why we have a new IT director. We're trying to drag us into the 21st century.
Oh, wait, 21st, right.
I'm just glad you weren't expecting me to fix it.
It's right next to the quill pen sharpener.
Can we try it again now from the beginning?
Go ahead and try it on my end, sure.
No.
I do have it here. I'm trying on this side.
Okay, we're gonna try it on this side because we're still not hearing the volume, so just one more minute.
Sure.
Apologies.
And then you redistribute it. You either repair it, you either bring it to a remanufacturer that can change it, and then put it back to the consumer. Every place in Canada is able to do this. Like Nanaimo is not special by any stretch of the imagination. We're a regular town that is just doing it. It feels good.
And it's already, you're already feeling that. Like you already have it. Like a whole ecosystem of these recycling jobs that they're building new stuff.
You're right, it's different groups doing different things, but it's all working together towards that 90% goal.
So I just wanted to highlight, we already have an ecosystem or a network of managing end-of-life products within our community, and oftentimes we don't recognize how well we're doing. And if we look at the economics of waste, in 2013, the Ministry of Environment did a study, and they concluded, depending on the increase in diversion across the province from 62 to 81%, that we would see 56 to 126 million in annual economic benefit, an increase in the GDP from 27 million up to 89 million, and generate between $1 million and $2.5 million in net annual revenue for BC. So the point here, waste diversion, it's good for the environment and it's good for the economy. But why does it increase GDP? And I'm gonna, if you can help me out with a couple more videos here, because I think they're really illustrative. So are you able to play this one on your end?
Yes.
Yes,
One moment.
we're on it. Thank you.
We did a 6-plex demolition the last 2 days here, so they're slowly sorting through it. Just over 6 years ago, they banned wood waste demolition. They're trying to get away from it, having it in the landfill. It works really well. We're able to recover quite a bit. It's an older building, so not a lot of spray foams and stuff like that. We're right around the 85% conversion rate.
Your guys are keeping 85% of demolition out of the land.
Out of that specific demolition,
Wow.
yeah.
So all of this really started based on a piece of legislation saying we're going to stop stuff coming into the landfill.
Basically,
And all these jobs happen.
Yep.
Wow.
And if you can bear with me for one more on the next slide.
Are all these used windows?
This is all used windows.
Wow.
This is one of my favorite departments. There's consistent supply.
Yeah.
There's consistent sales.
Into cottages and cabins and...
Cottages, cabins, chicken coops, garages.
Chicken coops?
Yeah.
It must feel great, though, to pull this stuff, would have otherwise gone to a landfill, and turn around and make a profit from it.
Yeah, no, we're capitalists. We do it for the money.
It's for the money. It's all about building. So if we want to get good diversion, we want sustainability. We want to build systemic and sustainable programs, and that's by making them economically viable. So how do we plan to do more of what we're already doing in our region? Well, if we look to the waste management plan and we look to the future, there's two quite significant significant initiatives that we're working on. One is around growing the waste industry around diversion, and then creating more and better services for residents. And the two strategies are mandatory source separation and waste hauler licensing. So what do they look like? The waste or the mandatory source separation is fairly simple. It's what everybody's doing right now if they live in a single family residence. They have 3 bins, an organics bin, recycling bin, and a garbage bin. What we're looking to do is promote that throughout all the business, multi-family sector, requiring everyone to have 3 bins or contract for post-collection sort. If they have the service, they're more likely to use it. We do regularly get calls, particularly from the multi-family sector, with residents that want that service. Right now, it's really hard to compete with somebody that's offering a single bin service because it's lower cost, and that tends to be what's chosen. Secondly, we're looking at licensing waste haulers. Why do we want to license haulers? It allows us to develop an economic model where we reduce tipping fees for the licensed haulers. The reason we'd like to reduce our tipping fees is we'd like the industry to beat the regional district on price. In other words, waste flows to the industry before it flows to the landfill. Then we want to include a disposal levy for waste that's shipped to any landfill or incinerator anywhere. So it's actually an economic disincentive to dispose. So again, the two parts there are move it to industry to encourage them to divert. That's what translates into more and better services for our community, because rather than, the regional district runs 2 facilities, one in the transfer station in Parksville and a landfill. If we're going to get higher diversion, we need to improve convenience. We need to leverage the industry to provide multiple facilities throughout our region for end-of-life products. So if we're going to grow the industry, what are the challenges to industry growth? Well, part of the interview that Mark Sakamoto did with Demex's Dave Bevan talked about, he asked about, his opinion on what we'd see for growth. And one of the things that he identified was challenges to land use, challenges to actually site these kind of facilities. So going forward, we need to look at how the management of end-of-life materials has changed, and it's changed radically over the last 30 years, and it will change more into the future. So this is a Return It Express depot. So bottle depot, basically a small kiosk where you can take your bag of, mixed bottles, cans, drop them off through a slot, and they'll insert the money, the refund directly into your account. However, in a lot of communities, these are really challenging to set up because land use hasn't recognized the change in how we manage end-of-life materials. So really my whole point of this presentation, my parting thought, is what can we do to remove barriers to industry growth? If we're going to build a plan that relies on that to get us higher levels of diversion, are there other ancillary tasks we can do that make it actually easier for those things to happen? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Larry. Questions, comments from anyone? I'll wait till Dawn.
I'm sorry. I'll have a question. Oh, he's gone now. Thanks for your Thanks for your presentation. Very informative. I should just preface my comments by saying I work in the construction industry, and I know the DBL boys very, very well. My comment is the discussion on contamination, whether it be, so we saw DBL's video is great about demolition of a 6-story building, which obviously they would have had to deal with hazmat and hazardous materials. But they also didn't deal with something current, and they talked about spray foam insulation, which is an issue facing everyone in construction right now. So contaminated materials in itself, and about contaminated soils. So contaminated soils is a huge issue for us, and how is the regional district dealing with those issues? And your plan moving forward to deal with them?
So, great. There's two main pieces to what you asked. One about contamination in the construction material, and you're right. There's materials like asbestos, the spray foams. There's lots of material within it that is not currently recyclable, and some of that material probably never will be recyclable. Nevertheless, we do still see an awful lot of material that is recyclable go to the landfill. Our last characterization study was in 2012. It's significant amounts of material that are recyclable, and over the last few years, we've had some huge demolition projects that have actually been barged across to the Lower Mainland or down to the U.S. for disposal, because the cost of actually just bringing in an excavator, knocking it all down, putting it in a bin, and shipping it to another jurisdiction for disposal was actually more profitable than a deconstruction project. So we're not going to be able to sort out some of the asbestos materials or spray foams. I expect that will continue to go to landfill, but there is a significant amount of material within the construction that is recyclable. PBL, as you say, does a good job. What we'd like to do is leverage the rest of the industry that compete with them to do similar to what they do. On the contaminated soil piece, that one, so the minute the province does not consider that part of municipal solid waste, and they've actually made some fairly significant to the legislation in recent years. So up until 2 years ago, we could at the landfill accept low levels of contaminated soil. We didn't get a whole lot because our pricing is fairly high, and things like hydrocarbon contaminated soil is largely treatable. So a simple disposal of landfill doesn't really make sense for me either. But there are materials like heavy metals and whatever that the only practical disposal is landfill. The Ministry of Environment actually changed legislation provincially to exclude municipal landfills from accepting that material, other than in some very easy cases. We put in a request to continue the practice we had historically. The province, at the time we did that, the province moved forward with a moratorium restricting any further acceptance in any municipal landfill not already authorized until, I think that expires in August, and then we'll renew that request, because we do know there are times that's a real challenge to the industry, to our area, because we end up shipping that material long distances it's actually an environmental detriment than benefit. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, thank you, it did, and I'm interested in the August date, so that was, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. Pierce, Mr. Gardner. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
We have lots of grist for our mill. Next, I'd like to welcome Scott Saywell, the Superintendent of School District 68, who's going to provide an overview of School District 68's reopening plan. Now, there is a challenge. Mr. Saywell, good morning.
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Nathan. Quanasilan Malakanaquail. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So we're Microsoft Teams here at the school district. So Zoom is new. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. How's that? Do you see a slideshow?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we're good. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for the invite. I wanted to do a couple things this morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about the district generally. I want to touch on our strategic plan, a couple of key capital projects that we're doing, as well as a little bit about our restart plan. And you might have some questions about that, but appreciate that we're just beginning to shape how we're going to provide a safe education for all of the students to come back September 8th. I like to start most presentations, if not all the presentations I do, with a picture of a little person. This little girl will start school in kindergarten on September 8th. She will graduate in 2033. And, the stuff I read suggests that 65% of the jobs haven't been created yet. That's an interesting proposition for a school district to prepare a little person for a job that hasn't been created. Also, I worry about things like the environment, clean air and water, and what that's going to be like when she graduates. No one can say how all of those, will she be able to afford a home? And so no one can sort of say how all those variables will play out, but I can tell you this little girl is full of promise, and I hope when she gets there, at the end of her 13 years, that the world is still full of opportunity. This is a brief overview, I guess, of the district. Just short of 15,000 students, 28 elementary schools, 7 secondary schools, 1 distributed learning school, which we call Island Connect Ed, which is becoming more popular during COVID. Just short of 2,300 employees, so I think we're one of the largest employers in Nanaimo. Population of 126,000, that of course includes outlying areas of Nanaimo and Ladysmith, and a budget of about $150 million. Wanted to highlight a couple of our more interesting programs. Everyone's been to school, so they know what your neighborhood or traditional school looks like. But these programs are for kids who maybe aren't meeting the success at those regular traditional schooling situations. So learning alternatives, we have about 300 kids there at Woodlands and some at Barsby, and it's really for students who just don't fit, students with anxiety. It's a program of choice, and it helps us get a lot of kids through to graduation. Island Connect Ed, of course, as I mentioned, our distributed learning school, about 500 full-time equivalent students throughout the year, gaining popularity as kids learn to be self-directed, independent learners. Again, for some kids that don't fit, they like to go there full-time. And finally, the Career Technical Center are one of our best relationships with BIU. Sees about 100 students enter into dual credit trades programs, and highly successful, again, to graduating more students. I don't know how you guys feel about standardized assessments. I can tell you this, that standardized assessments are a snapshot. They never tell the full story. But every 3 years, Canada, along with 80 other countries in the world, do this thing called PISA, which is the Program International for Student Assessment. They rate in the areas of math, science, and reading, and you can see that Canada, 8th in the world in science, 8th in reading results, and 12th in math. We are always in the top 10. We've slipped a little bit since the 2015, but this is we were first in reading a few years ago, and second in science. So our education system here is great in Canada. It's great in BC. As a province, BC is always at one of the top provinces on these tests. Kids in Nanaimo write this test, and Nanaimo is just a little bit under the, provincial average. Talk about that in a bit. Our new, relatively new strategic plan we embarked on in 2019 last year. A couple of highlights of this plan I want to go through. Here are our 4 main goals. Continuous improvement of instruction and assessment. As I mentioned, our grad rates are increasing. We have our highest grad rates in the last year than we've ever had in the history of public schools in Nanaimo Ladysmith, and so we're quite proud of that. Indigenous grad rates are our fastest growing grad rate, and so and the only way we come by those increases in grad rates is the great work that teachers and support staff do in classrooms, and so that's why we have the goal of continuous improvement of instruction and assessment. Number 2 is really about safe and caring, healthy learning environments, critically important during the pandemic for both staff and students. And it's really, as you can imagine, our focus next year, something called trauma-informed schools we're embarking on, and what we call sort of a more compassionate and understanding, kinder, friendlier sort of school system. To be a leader in environmental stewardship, it's sustainability. That is our civic duty. We are, as I mentioned, one of the largest employers, and so educating kids around being environmentally sustainable is critically important, and doing it as a staff. We have targets around GHG emissions, and again, really our civic duty, all of us, to ensure the planet is something that, as that little girl graduates in 2033, is going to be viable. Truth and reconciliation has been a goal since our last strategic plan. I can't imagine it won't be part of our future strategic direction. It is critically important. As I mentioned, we're graduating more Indigenous students than ever. We have something called the CASS reconciliation framework, which is really a governing framework for our entire school system. And what it essentially says is that we will walk together with our Indigenous partners, and that we will consider the land and the culture and the history of Indigenous peoples in every decision we make. Born of that reconciliation framework is something I'm really, really proud of, and that's our co-governance school with Snuneymuxw First Nation on reserve school that is a public school, the first of its type, Quam Staliqua, which means strong children. And we have districts around the province looking at us and how we are developing that school and how we are really sharing in the education with Snuneymuxw First Nation. Very, very proud of that. A couple of capital project highlights. Nicole Hammond Bay French Immersion School is getting an upgrade. You might have heard about that in the media. A $16 million upgrade to expand that school by 10 classrooms. We have a waiting list every year for French Immersion schools, and so this will help get parents and students into school. French Immersion, every single parent and student who wants to get in. Also, you might have heard recently some upgrades, seismic upgrades to Pleasant Valley and Solaire. That completion date is 2022, $18 million cost to that. We have probably 30 of our elementary and secondary schools that require seismic upgrades, and so we'll see an infusion of a couple $100 million by the Ministry of Education over the next 10 years to upgrade the vast majority of our schools. You would have also heard recently about over 400 new childcare spaces. Some of those spaces, 5 of them are child mining spaces, and the other 5 are before and after school spaces. We are are looking to our QP members to help build those spaces, as well as we'll have some of our older students in our construction programs helping out as well. So that's really positive. Maybe our most exciting project, we have lots of projects on the go and lots of partnerships, but the project on 5th Street called Tutuxton, which is the Ho'okaminum name, the original name for Mount Benson, and BC Housing and Smanil and City of Nanaimo are our good partners. And that project is exciting, which will provide social housing, some recreation space, and education facility for a community where it's critically needed in Harewood. So exciting project. Well, back to school. So these are our 5 stages of schooling as we work through this pandemic. We've been in all of these stages except stage 1, which sees us back in school full-time without restrictions. So it runs the gamut, of course, from remote learning in stage 5, where there won't be any in-class instruction, to stage 4 and 3, and we'll be entering school in stage 2, which is new for us, but requires us to cohort students. So a maximum of a 60-student cohort at elementary schools and 120 student cohort at secondary schools. And so you can imagine, you've all been to school, you can appreciate that elementary schools were kind of organized around separate classrooms that students remain in for the most part. And so that's going to be relatively easy for us to do, to maintain those cohorts of under 60 students. A little bit more problematic in secondary schools, and we're meeting this morning with secondary schools. I'll be back at the meeting after this presentation to talk more about how we're going to ensure that we have a full, comprehensive grade 8 to 12 curriculum for students while maintaining social distancing and maintaining cohorts of under 125 students. So you'll hear more about that as we start to organize what those timetables will look like. Well, here's some good-looking people. This is my family, and I showed this slide to say that Kim, my wife, and I are university graduates. Our kids are going to be fine as they go through the K-12 system. My daughter graduated last year, Jaden. She's up at VIU. She played volleyball last year. She's a good student. She does school well. The school district didn't really have to worry about her so much. My son, he's, again, a good student going into grade 11 next year. As a school district, he's not our prime target. He's not our biggest concern. We know in kindergarten, the students we have to be concerned about around inclusion and equity. Those are students who are new to our country. They are students who come from low socioeconomic situations, and they are Indigenous students. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so that's where our focus remains. And I think, I always end with this quote, I think the best measure of our success, maybe like the measure of the city's success, is how we're treating our most vulnerable members. And so that's our school district direction for the future, concentrating on the students who need us most. If I had an extra $1, I would put 90 cents into students who are vulnerable and in need of our attention just a little bit more. Thank you for your attention. Thanks for the invite, and I'm up for any questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Donna.
Sorry, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that your grad rates are the highest that they've been in a long time, but you didn't mention what they are. So what are your graduation rates right now?
Yeah, it's 83% for the population as a whole and 70% for our Indigenous students.
Thank you.
President Saucier, good morning.
Good morning, Your Worship.
She's also known.
I have also known that, women. Hey, but thank you for that. Incredibly challenging time, and some of what I want to ask you about we can take offline for another conversation, because I suspect you and I are facing some of the same issues on a number of fronts. But I wonder if you would like to speak to this group about, your program in food security and how you're going to be able to maintain some of those pieces, because I think it would be of interest to this group. But also what you're seeing in terms of trends for mental health for your learners. You know, as you said, it's not necessarily your kids or mine that are of concern, but even with mine going into grade 7, I would say that I see some anxiety and some significant changes in behavior that have occurred likely due to seclusion, isolation, and the like. So I'm wondering if you want to speak to what you're seeing and how you're going to maybe start to deal with some of these issues.
Well, thanks, Deb, and nice to see you. Congratulations on the Indigenous Women Leadership Award. Great questions. So around food security, we had a food program where we were serving about 1,000 families, and that really helped with mental health as well, because that was our connection to students who sometimes aren't well connected with the school. And of course, we know that schools play a really large role in that social, emotional support for students, particularly, again, for students who can't access that outside the school system. So, you know, through our Child Youth Family Support Workers and the good work by the Nine Lady Smith Schools Foundation, we were able to attach, through the use of food, frankly, and calling those parents the night before. In the beginning, we would call them and ensure that they were home for the food delivery. And what started as, you know, a 30-second conversation to say they were there turned into a conversation that in some cases lasted for 30 minutes. And so parents and kids need that connection to schools. Around the mental health, you know, we go through a number of training programs with our staff and even students to help them recognize when they're have some troubling mental health concerns, how to recognize those, and then where to access help for that. I probably get an email a day, Deb, advertising some online help for students to help with their mental health. And if students don't know how to access that, or they can't recognize when they have some mental health issues, then that's a challenge. So that's our focus going forward through this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much. I do appreciate it, Scott, and I think it's fair to say, as a grandparent of children in our public school system in Nanaimo, I wish the board well in dealing with what is going to be a very significant challenge in September.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Scott. Thank you for the invitation, and nice to see everyone. We'll see you all soon.
Keep well. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
The next is Jennifer Huffnagel, General Manager, Innovation Island Technology Association, and Graham Trax, Executive Director in EIR, Innovation Island Technology Association, who are going to provide a presentation regarding their digital economy program and other tech sector issues and opportunities. Welcome, both of you, this morning. Much appreciate you taking the time.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and task force members. Looks like you have a full slate here, so I'm going to just jump in. We'll share some slides and hopefully get into some Q&A surrounding what we've been been up to. I think first of all, this COVID crisis was not on our respective work plans. We're all dealing with quite a bit over these past few months, but somewhat coincidentally, a lot of our objectives with respect to bringing technology to the region and supporting businesses, to use more technology, does fit to the needs of the crisis. Certainly with respect to economic considerations. So I'm also hoping that through a little bit of the Q&A, we could just get a better understanding of what your objectives are as a group, and we'd be happy to share additional support data to some of the stuff that we're doing here. So if I've been empowered to share my screen, let me just check here. Thank you very much. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Looks great.
Perfect. Okay, so just a super quick recap on Innovation Island. I think most of you know who we are and what we do, but essentially we're a nonprofit industry-based organization. We work under the Crown Corporation called Innovate BC, and our primary offering is something called the Venture Acceleration Program. Really, the idea of that program is to work with tech startups, people that are coming in with napkins or early stage business plans or a bit of code or something like that, and we're here to shape those opportunities and try to get them to the next level. So for us, there's certainly aspects of economic development, entrepreneurship in general. We do a ton of networking on the front side and the back side, and we're really kind of trying to spur a lot of creativity. Now, on the bottom left, you'll see lifestyle. We do live in such a remarkable and beautiful space, and that in and of itself is starting to attract people. It's why lots of us are here. So those are some of the things that we just kind of recap when we talk about who we are and where we're going. We have really three primary drivers. We want to help companies build and grow and stay. Often within the tech sector, something gets spun up and it might get acquired and it might leave. It gets pulled away by venture capital. It gets pulled away by other partnership scenarios. So we really want to help companies build, grow, and stay. That's kind of our short theme song. I think you also know that we cover this really large and wonderful territory. It's lovingly referred to as the rest of Ireland, which is everything but Victoria. And as you can see, that's a ton of municipalities, regional districts, and First Nations communities. We're all working towards entrepreneurial development and community building and trying to really bundle this together. Now, when it comes to who we report to, which is taxpayers and the government, we have three basic marching orders, and that's to take these startups, starting at zero, and to help them create new tech-based jobs, to help them make some money, and to power that stuff up within the tech sector. That usually takes early-stage technology investment. So over the past few years, we've been super proud of these stats. They're compounding and compiling, and it's all from zero. These are startups. So I think when we look at the overall region, the tech sector is certainly bigger than this. But this represents the core of our work directly with companies. So jumping into this new program, I'm just going to share a very short backstory here. Island Coastal Economic Trust, Lynn Robert, their CEO, as I think many of you know, she came to us in late March and said, hey, what are you guys doing, or what could you do with respect to helping, small, medium-sized businesses face this crisis? So what could the tech sector do? And we were starting into trying to figure that out. And so we put together a partnership agreement with ICE-T and extremely quickly spun up what we're calling the DER3 program. We've somewhat shifted the messaging to Restart, Recovery, Reimagine, because we are moving into that next phase. And so over the past 3 months, we've now got over 300 businesses in this program. And I'm going to describe the nuts and bolts of that briefly here in a second. And along the way, WD came to us, Western Canada Economic Diversification, and said, hey, what can we do to help this further? And so we signed an agreement with them to give us a little bit more runway for this program. And then, as some of you may or may not have seen, just the other day, the province announced a fairly large deal with us and WD to scale this across the entire province. So it's a great kudos to how this is developed, based in Nanaimo and serving the region, and now going to go across the province. So what I'm showing here is a basic screen capture of our landing page, and we're keeping this very lean because this is a business first sort of solution here. We're acknowledging the challenges that businesses have faced and how things are going to change and develop, and so our onboarding process really targets three categories: small, medium-sized businesses that need help, service providers that can help get stuff done, and subject matter experts that have, in a lot of cases, really need advice and expertise. So all of this is compiling to a very fascinating database where we're interconnecting solutions and addressing challenges literally every day. So if this one shows correctly, we're just also acknowledging a couple of things. A lot of physical traditional businesses in the largest part of our economy have not been ultra competitive online. And so along comes this crisis that has forced a whole bunch of things. And so a lot of companies are really trying to get stuff done that has been happening for a couple of decades, and they're trying to make that happen fast. Now, we can actually do that because of the tools that we have, but it's certainly a challenge, and this program is here to help make that work. So, with respect to a quick overview, the whole essence of the program is to help businesses that want to enter or expand in the digital economy. This is a no-cost, no-obligation program. As I mentioned, we integrate all sorts of referrals to business service providers and experts. And as I mentioned, we're taking this to the end of the year at the very least. So, how we really help is first and foremost dealing with businesses where they're at. This is including one-to-one assessments and recommendations. What we're finding is that when businesses come into this space, they don't necessarily know what they don't know. So we focus a lot on just simply doing the right things at the right time in the right order. A real surprise with a lot of these companies is that we're helping them save time and money, and that is a bit of a surprise. We're also having a lot of hard conversations with folks, especially on the front end of this. This was pretty devastating, and I think it's still gonna hurt for a while yet. But we're opening up those conversations in a very trusted environment. We all know that there are changes in markets or consumer behaviors, and there are ripple effects. And so this is fascinating but challenging work for sure. So I'm going to just pass this over to my colleague Jennifer, and she's going to just do a very quick walkthrough of the process of our onboarding and some of those things. Jennifer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Graham, and hello to everybody. The program itself is quite ambitious, and what's really great is that we're able to target non-tech companies. So the program, DR3, is open to bricks and mortar retail, food service, tourism, restaurants, artisans, makers, commercial wholesalers, solopreneurs, nonprofits. So we really say the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. And DR3 addresses challenges of all sizes, from small, medium, large to extra large. Small, some of our businesses needing, say, help with Facebook marketing, or extra large companies having to completely pivot their business from training industry classes in the classroom to completely building a blended learning solution. And so, as Graham mentioned, we really are meeting clients where they're at in their digital transformation. Next slide, please, Graham. Thank you. So I just wanted to take a brief moment to walk you through the onboarding journey with a client example, a small medium business client, and again, open to everybody. So very simply put, business would apply online with a very quick online form. Then an intake meeting happens with one of our program advisors over the phone or Zoom, confirming application details and really doing a bit more of a deeper dive into the needs of that business. That business then receives an online presence assessment or an OPA that is looking at everything from their website to their social media presence, and we're providing that as a takeaway for the client. And then an immediate action plan or an IAP is created with some immediate steps, and sometimes this is a direct link and match to a digital service provider if that's what they're looking for. But in most cases, the needs of businesses are greater, and as we know, getting digital doesn't happen overnight. So we have team reviews of clients using our collective expertise. We have 6 people on our team, and where appropriate, then we escalate the business to a business advisor. Again, similar process, and another intake meeting, a deeper dive with that business advisor, additional action steps, and then and eventually a business action plan. And then where required, we don't, the DR3 program, we don't do the work, we don't build the online learning as an example, we don't do the digital marketing, we then do the matchmaking and the referral to the digital service providers in our program, subject matter experts, and in some cases, executives and residents as well. As mentioned, we meet the clients where they're at in their journey. It's a customized plan, and it's a process. There's no silver bullet, and this doesn't happen overnight. Back to you, Graham. Oh, no, sorry, that's me, one more. I just wanted to share a little bit of a story. I did mention one of the clients that came into the program that has all of his students that were doing classroom training. He has trained over 10,000 students in the classroom. When COVID happened, he then completely had to pivot and do everything on Zoom. So he's in the program because he's looking for a blended learning solution, and we're working with him on his training design and he's looking at us for support and guidance for a learning management system. So we've been early days of moving everything fully hybrid into that blended learning model, and that is Darren Hebert from Nanaimo, actually. So back to you, Graham.
Thank you, Gus. Nice. Yeah, so what I'm going to flip through here are just some numbers with respect to the stats and just a quick slice and dice here. So first of all, as I mentioned, we are serving the region, but this is the breakdown of engagements within this program. So as you can see, no huge surprises, but there are significant blocks within the region that have developed. So that's fairly self-evident. When we get into the geography of the digital service providers, again, slightly larger in Central Island, and that makes sense, population base. And these are professional service providers working within the digital realm at some capacity. We inventory all of the different skill sets and scope of services, and that's been immensely helpful in quickly providing recommendations to businesses in need. The engagement breakdown, now this is another kind of slice, also very, very large for Nanaimo Oceanside, but that just is constantly being compiled. There are over 100 data points that we collect within this process, and obviously we can do the math on how to slice and dice that later, but it's becoming immensely interesting to see how this is presenting over the course of time. Now, if we look at primary business activities here, and I can just move my little screen here, for the most part, we are dealing with kind of retail sector product services. What we need to consider, in my opinion, with respect to retail spaces is that a lot of these businesses, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, don't really need to go online for sake of their normal trade and within their normal trade area. But this is how that's breaking down. Now, here's another slight challenge. When it comes to the digital readiness, businesses that are actively selling online, that want to sell online, we have 55% of these businesses that are not online, and they like to figure that out. So that, as a percentage total, is not that great. That represents the challenges at hand. When we come to markets and what we feel, or what the businesses feel are going to be changes coming at us. The red and the blue represent, yes, we're going to see some changes, but I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. So we have a very, very unsure market base with respect to how the economy is going to change and what's going to be needed. So that is hopefully a super quick and hopefully efficient A to Z of what this program is. And I always like to save a little bit of time for Q&A if you guys would like. And once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you very much, both of you. Councillor Brown, Tyler's got his digital hand up, so we'll let him go.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks both you, Graham and Jennifer, for the presentation. My question is a little bit more, and I've had some conversations with you in general, but I still lack a little clarity. People love to talk about tech as like the next great opportunity for Nanaimo, and we need to do more to jump on that. But at the same time, it's very clear that it's a competitive market globally, definitely a competitive market on the West Coast, and just in BC as a whole. You know, I know there's some hot spots in Vancouver and Victoria. Obviously, there's a lot going on. My question is there really an opportunity for Nanaimo in a large scale as part of our overall economic health? And if so, what should we be focused on to help cultivate that or help incubate that as a municipality or as our local government structure to add support to that if there is indeed an opportunity?
Sure. Thanks, Tyler. So first of all, and with respect to this DER3 program, I think there's both an opportunity and a need to help more traditional businesses become more tech focused. Not necessarily making products that are going to go into the technology market, but being empowered or enabled with technology. Now, here's the kicker with that. Most of their competitors within larger trade areas or cities or just generally are embracing and utilizing technologies at fairly advanced levels. You know, I've said in other presentations, you know, that it's a fascinating story to look at a little company that sold books online that's now worth $1 trillion and is slowly but surely every day eking away at Main Street retail, you know, obviously called Amazon. So we have the biggest opportunity to empower regular businesses that make up our tax base locally, and that's kind of first and foremost. Next, with respect to core tech sector stuff, the building of companies or the attracting of companies, that absolutely is a process. So our province has three very large, you know, comparatively, you know, towns, Vancouver, Victoria, and Kelowna, really do have quite vibrant tech ecosystems. And it took about 20 years to get there. So we're working within our region to do the same thing. I think Nanaimo has statistically some advantages and is going in that direction. But it very much is a process like what we've been referring to with respect to this program and companies that are not digital going digital. So the last thing I'll share, just because I was reading this with some of my governmental reporting things, BC's tech sector within the entire GDP of our province is about 7%. Now, when we look at the export functions of that, it's about 3%. So that's for the whole province, right? So put these things into context and I think dedicate to the process of it. There is no magic wand to make any one place you know, a tech place overnight, but this is where we often just double down on the work that we do with our clients to get clients to the point where they can build, grow, and stay. And the byproduct of that is you have more companies that are in that space. There are certainly many more tech-based companies that are here and that have been here for many, many years. And we want to help them to grow, and we want to hopefully help them to stay. And like, you know, case in point, it was really great that when Untitled Robotics was acquired, they didn't pull up and move away elsewhere. It was also great that they were acquired by a Canadian company rather than a U.S. company. We've had companies in our program that have been acquired by U.S. companies, and they've disappeared, fully. And so we fight really hard to try to keep them here. So hopefully that addresses it in context a little bit.
If I may, just a quick follow-up, what would you view the role of, because I think there's a tendency always local governments want to be involved in things, or government to be involved, and if there is a role in some of the stuff that you're talking about, what would it be for, whether it's attraction, whether it's holding on to companies and having them keep their offices here, what could we do to preserve some of those aspects that you touched upon, understanding that it's a process that unfolds over time?
Well, I'll just seize that last comment. Understanding that it's a process that unfolds over the course of time ties to being mindful and aware of the data that's in behind, the drivers to that sort of stuff. So being proactive with really understanding the mechanics of how to build, a tech ecosystem. That is job one, and that leads to a greater awareness of what tactics or strategies can be employed to do more of that. It's often wishful thinking of communities around the world to say, I want to be that. But that takes a lot of work, and that takes a pretty deep dive on the constituent parts that would actually make something like that happen. So by virtue of this session, these types of sessions, I think you guys are going in the right direction. Get the data so that strategies and tactics can be adjusted proportionately to where we're at, and it's small incremental gains that actually build an ecosystem of any sort, in my opinion.
Thanks very much.
So there's a question there
from Signe now.
Yeah.
Graham, can you see that, or do I have to read it out?
Oh, okay, okay, just give me a second here.
Thank you. You can tell where I am with technology when I have to ask if you can see it or I have to read it out.
Well, hey, I've got my glasses on at least here. Okay, so this question with respect to businesses engaging with the program or their ability to adapt, it ties very much to some of the challenges and I'll even say anxieties that a lot of businesses are facing. So I'll give a slight day in the life with respect to this program. When you have a solid going concern business that does well with retail traffic, that is tourism dependent, and it goes through its seasonal adjustments, and something like this, pretty massive, comes and changes all of that, well, that business is generally not ready to go fully digital, certainly not, and they're not necessarily ready or interested to even go partially digital because it's just not what they've been doing. So we do a lot of hand-holding to explain some of the benefits that could come with that and try to de-stress the challenges that they're going to face so that we can take a few steps in the right direction. And this is where doing the right things in the right order at the right time is sound advice, I think, in a lot of cases. But with respect to going digital, we've had clients come to us that they've taken some webinar that says it's all about SEO, and then we do a little deeper dive and we say, well, SEO is a thing, and SEO is good, search engine optimization, but that's not what you need to focus on right now. That's not your starting point. So we make a lot of adjustments with these businesses. And part of our challenge and part of our ask with respect to this task force is if you know businesses that you think could benefit from some of this, just point them our way, because while we're happy with the onboarding that's happened so far, let's say about a little over 300 companies, we have built a system that could probably address thousands. And so we do want to de-stress this for businesses that are facing a little bit of concern or anxiety and try to increase that engagement. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks. And I was interested to see there was nonprofits there, 6%, so that was interesting. So push that. And the reason I asked the question was it's the issue we're facing in the nonprofit sector throughout the island. There's those who are engaging and adapting with whatever programs are available and trying to be proactive, and we know there's a significant number that aren't. And so part of what we're trying to get a sense on the island is, those sectors or those in the nonprofit sector, those subsets of the sector that aren't going to adapt. And then there's going to be a hole in terms of programs and services. And so that's, we're working at different tables to figure out what that looks like and do that outreach. So I was just curious from the chamber side, yours and other business groups, barrie, et cetera, across the island, what's the assessment of who's not going to respond and who are those people, that's where the unemployment's going to be, that's where we're going to see lack of services that just in one profit. So thanks. And I'll start pushing people your way.
Yeah, those all very good points, and certainly those things are architected in some of our solutions. We really work hard to just address the first one or two things that businesses need to do with respect to where they're at. Get that going, that builds some confidence. It's incredibly overwhelming if you just give somebody a ginormous list of all the things that they got to do. It'll scare people away. So we take a very practical approach to that, and nonprofits, solopreneurs, businesses at larger capacities, even actually, well, I can't get into all the names, but even some fairly significant businesses that just want to do more advanced things but haven't had the experience doing that. This program is really architected to also give benefits to those service providers that could help get some of those more advanced things done, and it's a bit of a lead generation for them. We go through a very transparent, vetting process, and that's the whole idea.
Anyone else? Graham, I want, I try and see the world in a simple way because that's about the depth of my understanding. And everything I've sort of heard over the last few years, and certainly the way technology operates, you have a problem, you're dealing with somebody who's on a computer perhaps in Dubai or Bangladesh or wherever. It strikes me in terms of attraction, which is a point that Tyler raised around attracting tech companies here and potentially retaining them as well. It gets back to what I'll call geography. In other words, what's this place like and what's attractive? I think Jake has talked about, is it the picket fence, the white picket fence techie who wants to own a single family dwelling. And it's tell me if I'm really off base when I say this. It's almost as important as anything else is having, quote unquote, what you refer to at the start of this as lifestyle, as branding. What is it that would make Nanaimo an attractive place for you who can literally set up anywhere in the world, potentially, subject to citizenship laws and immigration, all those things. If you can set up anywhere in the world, it seems to me that the geography of this place, in other words, the physical attributes, the presence of the university, a progressive school district, the opportunity to own a home, participate in recreation activities. That's if we do that well, that's almost the most important thing that we have within, quote unquote, our control to some extent, or our ability to influence. That's almost the most important thing we can do. I mean, the city can't give big tax breaks, that's a provincial federal issue. We can't give you the climate of Southern California, but we do have a university here that's ready, willing, and able. And when you mentioned the figures around, I think 7% of the BC economy, but 3% of exports, I mean, I suspect that in terms of exports, post-secondary education is a bigger export potentially, and Deb will tell me if I'm wrong, than technology. And yet, I think that's what I see as the opportunity, is to do well what we already have, so that people will say, I'm attracted to this place, and I can be in Nelson, I can be in Prince George, I can be in Inuvik, But on balance, everything I really want in life is here in Nanaimo. Am I really off base on this and putting it too simplistically? And be honest, I take a lot of blunt talk.
No. Thank you, Mayor. And I think some of you might recall that I said as much in some previous opportunities to present. Focus on the fundamentals, do well with the fundamentals, and that in and of itself is an attractant for all sorts of folks in all sorts of different industries. So there is nothing wrong with that at all. And you correctly pointed out, and I think it's important to understand what is within your control and influence. When it comes to the lifestyle attributes, the amenities of a community and attracting anybody from any industry, that obviously counts. That scores pretty high. School systems, proximity to this or that, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of other towns and places on the map that have similar stuff, but it depends what people are interested in. When it comes to the tech sector, there's a couple of other elements there. So it's proximity to a talent base, it's proximity to capital, it's proximity to customers. Even though tech is virtualized, proximity to customers where you can walk in and do demos, or you're basically networking within your industry, going for beers, having a dinner, that counts, and so does capital and talent. So again, over the course of time, you get good at one thing and you get slightly better at another thing, and the next thing you know, you have the vibrancy or the density of a tech ecosystem that is in Gastown or Yaletown or Vancouver, likewise in Victoria or Kelowna. So those are the fundamental building blocks. You're actually dead right.
Thank you. Deb, I think you popped something up on the screen about post-secondary ed again, please.
Well, it was just answering your question. Post-secondary education is the third largest export of the province, and we're the second largest exporter of education in the country behind Ontario. So there you go.
Wow. The first one I sort of knew. The second one is a lovely cheering up surprise in the morning. On the other hand, it also, I suppose, reflects a certain vulnerability as we go into this coming academic year.
Now, Mayor, if I could, if by chance you can free up a big chunk of your budget to give it to some technology companies, just let me know.
Thank you very much. I'm used to being asked. Anything further from anyone? If not, thank you very much, you two. I really do appreciate it. Oh, Tyler. Tyler's got... No, Tyler's saying goodbye.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and good luck with this work and the task force overall.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Now, the next is an update from Sinemic First Nation. Are we not?
Brian was doing something. Is Brian not doing it? I'm not doing that. Not today. Oh, okay.
I'll talk more about Brian's involvement potentially for the 28th August.
Okay.
For that meeting, thank you.
So you're not going to start this morning?
Not today.
Not today.
Just listening and learning.
Thank you. Ian, are you going to give us any?
Probably a placeholder here in case there was any comments that you wanted to provide or... Me?
Please.
Yeah. Okay, well, how many comments?
We're always happy to hear from you.
Prepared. Just a general kind of update about what the nation's up to. I mean, there's so much... so much on our plates right now. We're kind of on the cusp of moving on. That's so exciting. We've alluded to it, I guess, over the last couple of months, but with synergies, potential synergies between Nanaimo and Deb's organization at VIU with when that land transfer does take place with the D&D property. Imminently going to be receiving completing our phase 2 of our comprehensive reconciliation agreement, which will bring quadruple our private forestry lands, which has really been an economic boon for Nanaimo over the last 5 years. We've unlocked tens of millions of dollars from that. We're going to quadruple that
So can I just ask you a quick question
Yeah.
about the forestry lands? Is there still another chunk of lands to be transferred to you from the province on the forestry piece?
Yeah.
And is that happening or?
It's in process and it's imminent. Yeah.
Good, sorry. Just so you remember.
Yeah. So that's that's all very exciting for us, and it gives us the opportunity to invest in opportunities in our territory, like we have with the hotel downtown, and there's a few other things we have on the go that aren't public yet, but other ones are. Like we're building a 26 unit townhome development, which is it's a big deal for an organization like ours, and is able to the kind of job growth we're seeing and the economic growth we're seeing is going to give the nation an opportunity, because my focus with the nation is really focused on job creation and wealth creation and providing our government with the opportunity. We pay a dividend to our shareholders, which is our citizens and the government, really our government, and with they do with it as they as those elected leaders kind of see fit, and we trust them to do that and focus on the health issues and mental health issues and those kind of things. But I get to do, I think, the stuff that I'm interested in, which is the job creation and the wealth creation, and I'm confident that we'll see PDG as an organization be one of the largest private employers in our territory in the next 5 years, because we're unlocking that much economic potential within that time, and that's really exciting. For we have a membership base of less than 2,000 people, so when we're able to create that much wealth, we're going to be able to start lifting our people out of poverty, because a lot of them are truly struggling, and way below what the average, way below what the lifestyle of the average Canadian enjoys. So that's kind of what we're working on. I can't speak too much about the direction of the nation as a whole, because that's not my position. I like to always be very clear that I don't represent Snuneymuxw. I represent Richard Development Group. I'm not an elected leader of the nation. I have a chief and council to take on that work and take the brunt of what that really means too. I could prepare, if you thought it would be beneficial, I could prepare like a more fulsome kind of update as to where we are, and I can kind of get some clarity on what would be okay to share.
I appreciate.
Because there is a lot of very exciting things that are coming down the pipeline.
I mean, well, appreciate you're in a difficult position. You may not be elected leadership, but don't be modest. You're a leader within the Snuneymuxw First Nation, and are seen as such. Obviously, I think that reconciliation without economic development is kind of a, it's talking about the cupcake instead of the meal. It's absolutely crucial. It goes to the guts of things. People are struggling in poverty. What is it? Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose of my generation. So I mean, it's absolutely where it's at, and I think Chief and Council have made that very clear, that they're there to make job creation very important, and for that reason, and what we've heard from Graham this morning and Scott, and I think all the presentations we've heard, confirm that notwithstanding COVID, and every time I have to think about doing something, I realize it may not be possible to do it the way I'm thinking of doing it or wanting to do it because of COVID. Nevertheless, it is still a really, really exciting time in this community in particular, let alone in terms of history and where the world is at, but I think in this community it's still a really exciting time with lots of opportunities, and that's why I'm delighted to have heard the presentations this morning. Having said that, any questions or comments before I call for a motion to proceed in camera? Deb, Tyler, Signe? Good. Motion to proceed in camera. I think Tyler moved it with his thumbs up. We have a seconder.